Welcome back to the channel. A lot to talk about, especially with election day approaching next week on April 28th. It is super important that as a Canadian, as someone who is looking at the future of Canada and you're eligible to vote, get out there and cast that ballot. Doesn't matter what team you're rooting for. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's important to get out there and vote and make an informed decision. A lot of times we're going to get calls. We get calls from clients, especially parents with younger children that are approaching age of majority. They're looking at saying, hey, how do we plan for our kids' futures, especially when it comes to housing? This is a really big sore spot. And a lot of Canadians, we got out to the polls early. We saw a massive turnout. We're seeing a massive turnout for this election. I think this is going to be an election that will shape the future of Canada. It is a super important election, especially when we think about everything that's happening, not only within Canada, but global forces that are impacting how Canadians live day to day. And that is obviously what is happening in the US with these tariffs and the auto tariffs, and with the uncertainty that we've discussed on multiple occasions on the channel. So what I really want to emphasize here is not to help you select what side or which team to vote for. Ultimately, that's a decision that you should be making consciously. A lot of times we'll get asked, and which is the team that would represent the housing infrastructure here in Canada. And, for the longest time, it was definitely the Conservative Party. And I still believe in those who know me, those who maybe gotten understandings of my political views. I am a conservative. I have become a conservative when I was much younger. I definitely was a little bit more on the liberal side when the party itself was pretty much central, under Chrétien, where now things have started to change a little bit, right? You have two different spectrums. You're on one side or the other, or at least on one side, you're more on one side than the other, I should say. But ultimately, there's this conversation around housing. And if we take everything else and all the other political conversations and noise and just focus in on housing, because that's the focus of this channel. You can have your own views about everything else, and definitely you can share them in the comment section below if you wish. But you have a gentleman like Mark Carney, former head of the Bank of Canada, former head of the Bank of England. You have Pierre Poilievre, a career politician, someone that's been under the Harper government, who's actually in housing and was someone that was admired for their housing policy and keeping housing affordable, and has a lot of experience in the housing sector. And that came out, at least for me, and once again, this is an opinion, that over the course of the ramp up to the campaign, as they were trying to get, a vote of no confidence, all the things he was pushing forward for the housing market, the no GST on homes under 1.3 million, I believe, obviously repurposing Crown land, federal buildings, kiboshing the CBC to turn those into affordable homes, right? To actually change the direction, start to cut the red tape and bureaucracy that is so rampant in the government, especially in municipalities, where it's so hard to get funding. There's so many barriers to get those homes built, right? It's basically rewarding the builders and the municipalities that build those homes. I think the Conservatives want around 2.3 or 2.5 million by next year. Like, look, these are all ambitious targets, especially when we have a lack of construction right now. But what I'm trying to get at is the Conservative Party had came to the forefront with these policies. They were the leaders, the pioneers in bringing these changes, and then the Liberals ended up copying this policy because they saw how popular this would have been prior to tariffs, right? This was a big conversation amongst Canadians. So, do you want to focus on the guy or the people, the team that is leading the charge, or the ones that are just copying or hoping for that to work, or, maybe fall on a lot of voters and say, hey, they're both very similar in their policies. Now you're looking externally. Now, once again, this video is not here to sit there and say, hey, this is what this side's doing, this is what that side's doing. Obviously, there's multiple parties, but we're talking generally about the two 500-pound gorillas in the room, which are generally the Liberals and the Conservatives. If we look at the polls right now, whether we should accept that these polls are anywhere close to accurate or not, at the end of the day, it shouldn't deter you, because a lot of people say, well, what are the chances? What's this going to happen? Look, at the end of the day,
it's important to get out and vote. There's a lot of things that happen. I've seen this happen firsthand. Being out, I voted early. We went out to the polls. We saw a lot of young people out there voting. People that have, made it a point to say, "Hey, Anth, I have never voted or haven't voted in many elections over the last little while because I just didn't feel that it was important enough to vote." And a lot of people that may have moved, if you did change, ultimately don't get discouraged. Reach out. Go online to Elections Canada, figure out how to register, how to vote. You're still in time. There's still early ballots. If you can't make it on the Monday, on the 28th, figure out a way to get your ballot out there. Try to go. I know it might be coming out a little bit. Should have done this maybe a little bit sooner. But I really think it's super important to get out there and vote. This is an election that could change the course of Canada and the economy, especially when it comes to housing, where we're going to be going. Who's going to be dealing? Who's going to be the next prime minister of Canada who actually will deal with Donald Trump? And right now, some people are saying, well, Donald Trump wants, Mark Carney to win. He wants the Liberals to win because he thinks it's going to be easier to deal with them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, he's a businessman. We've learned a few things from Donald Trump. We talked about on the channel before. I said this a long time ago. I'm going to inject my opinion here, and you can disagree or agree with me in the comment section below. It's important to have a healthy debate. Realistically, what I believe is that these tariffs were going to be just a ploy to get a more favorable outcome. Will they stick around? Will they be sticking around at these same levels that they're at now? Obviously, we'll see as we start to see him pull back on a lot of these particular tariffs as a result of some big interruptions in the bond markets and stock market. Will he walk back all these trade deficits? And is he looking to deal with someone who's a lot easier to walk over, like Mark Carney? Because he's already, someone, in my opinion, from my data, he's, moved his businesses and big proponent of, these modular homes, which are fantastic. If we were in the wartime measures where you're building all these homes that, nobody maybe really want, are they really going to be what Canadians need? Yet to be determined. But who stands to win from it? When he's he still hasn't relinquished a lot of his. And I don't get into his personal stuff, but he owns a lot of stake in Brookfield Asset Management, which definitely does build modular homes. So you have to look at the vested interest there. Not to say that no politician is not guilty of all this. But let's they say you have to take a look at everything and say, okay, well, if this guy here is going to be easier to deal with, maybe we need someone who's a little bit more challenging, maybe someone who's going to stand up to Donald Trump and not just get walked over with these automotive tariffs and basically demolishing the Canadian economy as we've come to know it over the last little while. And the last and final thing is, yes, we might see the Liberal Party, a lot of the MPs, a lot of the cabinet, still the same, right? You're just changing the coach. The players are still the same. They're still doing the same things. They stand behind the same things. They're just changing the guy ahead. Now, maybe that works. Maybe it doesn't. Definitely helps with the team because nobody really liked Trudeau. They were sinking the polls by changing him. Yes, definitely going to move in the right direction. But the fact is, for me, the Liberals in the last 10 years, it was a lost decade in the fact that we've fallen as a Canadian economy, as Canadian individuals. Our GDP per capita has sunk to all-time lows, where we were once a country that was really well positioned. We were the envy of the world. A lot of people said, hey, how do we be like Canada? Now it's like, how do we not be like Canada? And that is something that I cannot, by all stretch of the imagination, vote for the Liberals to give us another fourth term of epic failures. I mean, this is just my opinion. Once again, as I said, this is my opinion, but go out and vote, cast your ballot. I mean, this is what the whole reason behind this election is to give yourself a voice. And some people say, Anth, what's one vote? Well, it's not just about one vote, right? This is what I've said to multiple people, even young people, where I've heard people like their grandparents, like, yeah, I think my grandparents are like, you better get out and vote. I hear this more and more, especially with this election. The reason is because you can influence somebody who wasn't going to vote by sharing it on social media. This is the beauty. You don't have to share who you voted for, but share that you're voting, right? You may turn someone over. One person who maybe in the family is the leader and says, hey, you know what? Let's go out there and vote. Let's get together in the car, get your ballots. Let's go as a family and vote. You can change the course. Sometimes it may not be, or sometimes it could be that you get into an area where you're voting for the particular candidate and it could be literally a vote that comes down to maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, right? let's see what happens on election day. I really think, as I said, it's important. It's not just the one vote, it's what that one vote stands for. And if you can influence other people to get out there and vote, if it's one family can move mountains and start to get other people out and influence them, say, hey, get out and vote. Have that conversation. If you are a family that's never voted, or you're an individual that's not sure and it's never voted before, but I mean, you're age of majority, you're able to vote, get out there and vote. Trust me, it's super important. Get educated, understand that this is your future. Who you vote for can change the course of history here in Canada. And we don't want the repeat of at least for me, we don't want to repeat the last 10 years. So take that most important thing, take away from this, get out and vote, please. But next week, when we do our video, we'll be talking about the elections and who won and what is going to be coming down next for Canada. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel, but we'll see you next week. Get out there and vote.